welcome back to the Prepare Like a Pro podcast. This week on the show we have Nathan Parhnam, author of The Sporting Parent. Nathan is the Director of Strength and Conditioning at Brisbane Grammar School. And before we start episode 51, the Prepare Like a Pro mission is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge with some of the industry's most inspiring individuals, and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show your support by following us on Instagram and by subscribing to the podcast. We're on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. Remember, if you want to post a question for Nathan, hit the question button at the bottom of your screen, where we'll get to a Q&A later on in the chat. I'm just going to send my request over to you, Nathan, now. So. G'day, Nate.
Hey, man. How are you?
Going well, mate. Thanks for jumping on.
No worries at all. Appreciate the invite. Looking forward to it.
That was a smooth transition. One of the best ones, I reckon.
I'd say that'd be my best as well, mate. So we're off to a good start.
We're off to a great start. I'm sure it'll continue. Well, we'll dive straight into the beginning, mate. When did you discover you had a passion for strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so when I finished school, a lot of my mates kind of started uni straight off the bat because their parents expected them to, and that was considered the norm. But for me, my parents never really pushed that barrier or that boat, so to speak. So I took a year off after school and didn't really know what to do with myself. And then the year after that, I ended up taking up a certificate 3-4 in business management at TAFE because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, and I kind of thought if there's one kind of degree that would be applicable across a variety of different areas, then a business degree would be it. But throughout that time, I kind of, I finished it and I thought it was interesting, but I wouldn't exactly say it was my passion. And I started training in a variety of different things, and particularly combat sport, and just kind of became obsessed with it. I played a variety of different sports as a kid, but that was kind of the thing that really, I suppose, triggered it, in that I just became obsessed with training and just the whole way that the human body responds to it. So the following year I signed up, and funnily enough, as a mature age student at 21 or something like that. And then kicked off my Bachelor of Exercise Science at ACU.
Fantastic. So was it you mentioned combat sports? What type of training were you doing? Was it like powerlifting based, bodybuilding, Olympic weightlifting?
Mate, I did a lot of things, but I actually had an older brother who started competing in Muay Thai, and I liked boxing, and he kind of said, why don't you come check it out? And so I checked it out, and I was 17 at the time, and I ended up doing that for several years. But with him being, fighting competitively, it kind of allowed us to train together, and I did various forms of resistance training, and we kind of explored different avenues with each other. So that was, over 20 years ago now. So it's combat sports come a long way since then. So, but that's how it all started anyway.
Yeah, fantastic. So did he have a passion for the strength and conditioning side as well, or were you almost his strength and conditioning coach in a sense?
Not at all. He was the complete opposite. He was, I suppose, more competitive in the, in the combat side of it. And from my end, he trains at the moment now as he's gotten older, but at the time he actually didn't enjoy training, but he enjoyed the competing side of it. And I was the reverse. So I, dabbled in the gym and stuff like that, sparring all the different guys and getting him ready and things. And but for me, the competitive side of it wasn't really in my interest. I just became obsessed with training. So it worked well, actually. I suppose you could say it was a pretty good brotherhood in that
absolutely.
time. So it worked perfect.
Fantastic. So then you started a degree at ACU, and how did you find that? And what was your first role, I guess, or first experience as an S&C?
Yeah, so I loved it. I suppose I was fortunate that I didn't just go into that undergraduate degree like a lot of other, recent graduates from school who just kind of fell into it because they liked sport and didn't know what to do with themselves. So for me, I suppose I had that little bit of advantage because I kind of knew that was what I was really passionate about. And I was really fortunate that I had Darren Burgess as one of my lecturers. And so I was a really big pest to him. And he, funnily enough, gave me my first opportunity back before the A-League with the Parramatta Power in the former National Soccer League. And from then it kind of escalated there. I did a couple of seasons with him, and one thing led to another, and all the work experience or work placements that I volunteered my time, they ended up giving me, that's how I ended up getting paid gigs in the long run. So, and which actually ended up into my first full-time S&C role.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's a well, I was the same. I started my degree later on at a mature age, and I did find that there was a bit of an advantage because you did sort of know what you were doing. Like, you're a lot more purpose in spending your time in the degree and making those connections and relationships with your peers, opposed to when you're straight out of high school. It's you're just sort of there for whatever reasons, have a bit of fun, which is important too. But I think that the travel side is a good thing to do after high school if that's something you're interested in, for young S&Cs out there, or for those looking to get into the industry. It seems to be a common trait amongst guys that I'm interviewing as well, that get some experience, whether it be in personal training first, or for yourself, it was training yourself and your brother before going into sports science. So there's many different routes that you can get there, isn't it?
Yeah, there is, exactly, mate. And I couldn't agree with you more, because for me, you threw out, funnily enough, back then, even if you graduated with a uni degree, you weren't actually deemed to be qualified to do personal training. So the way it worked in New South Wales was that in the holidays for, in between semesters, I actually did a Cert 3, Cert 4 in fitness and personal training in the uni holidays. And it was really weird back then, because that allowed me to legally work as a personal trainer with insurance, so to speak. But even if I had a degree, I actually couldn't. So that changed a few years. Yeah, it changed a few years after, and I know a lot of the universities rallied together to get that changed, and it eventually did. So for me, I was just really fortunate that I suppose started on the front foot. And being a personal trainer was unreal while I was at uni, because it just suited the hours and everything like that. It was amazing. So. I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Even now, like, people become obsessed with, I want to be a strength and conditioning coach. And for me, I genuinely did as well. But the personal training route was a really cool journey, because I think I ended up doing it for about 5 years or something, throughout it, until I ended up getting a full-time gig too. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And how did you find the A-League? What was your role at the club? And what was sort of the demands of the job?
Yeah, so before the A-League started, it was called the NSL, the National Soccer League, and basically I was Burjo's market picker-upper. I think all the athletes in the team, the guys who are even my age, used to call me the apprentice, and I'd just hang off his pocket, basically, and do all the things that he didn't want to do. But for me, it was just an unreal opportunity to, I suppose, a lot of the biggest lessons I actually learned were early, in the fact that it really showed me and proved to me that it doesn't matter how much literature you read and what the science says, but in the real world, so to speak, that it may not necessarily work out that way, and this is how it actually happens in the real world. So for me, that was a really invaluable thing, and it's just something that I took on board. So,
and was it just you two as part of the high performance sort of team?
Yeah, basically, mate. Like, even back then, they didn't even have GPS. Like, Burjo would be, tracking, and I would be doing it too. I'd be filming at times, and he would be on there. He'd finish the sessions, and he had this trackpad that he used to have a pen and track every players that would, supposedly kind of measure their speeds and distances and all these sort of things. Like, it was a different world, and it was really cool, because there was another mate of mine whose name's Adam Waterson, who's over with LA Galaxy now, and he was with the Western Sydney Wanderers for a while in the A-League as well, and he and I were both uni students, so we were kind of just, shoulder to shoulder at times, I suppose, turning up to whatever sessions worked around our uni timetable, and that was it. So, it was good. So I did 2 seasons with him doing that, and then throughout that, he ended up investing in me, and I suppose giving me the opportunity to look after the youth team. So that was my opportunity, I suppose, dabble with how I would apply my craft and stuff like that. And I was really, really fortunate for it, because throughout that time I was still essentially working with him. And so if ever I was stuck in a rut, then it was an opportunity for him to, I suppose, help me out of it, and get me on my way. So
fantastic. How did you go about getting that experience? Like, for those S&Cs that are still studying and they may have a lecturer that's in the industry, that they want to get work experience with, or someone they know that's in the industry, like Darren was for you. Did you approach him after a class one time? Did it take a bit of assistance to get the opportunity? Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose because I knew that was what I wanted to do, and Matt, I'll acknowledge it. He even says it in my latest book too, given that he wrote the foreword for it, and that I was that annoying guy basically who knew what I wanted to do. It was just basically a pestering him at every moment. I suppose for me, it was just a learning thing and understanding why and how we go about it. And one day I just said to him, "Can I come and watch a session or whatnot?" And he was more than happy. Back in those days, it was kind of I sound really old saying back in those days, but it was one of those things where interning and stuff like that was few and far between. People just didn't do it. They kind of were like, "Oh, what are you trying to steal my ideas or whatever?" But Burjo was kind of egoless enough to say, "Oh, mate, come down and watch me do my thing or whatnot." So I just asked around and even other sports as well. Similar thing. I think too often these days, graduates are doing things like taking up post-grad. Like there's so many students now who end up graduating from university with post-grad qualifications who actually, aside from their uni placement, have never actually invested the time and volunteered their time. So I know this because I've interviewed a lot for a lot of internships in the various roles that I've had, and I've screened through hundreds of applications, and a lot of those applications are individuals who, they're still pouring beers at a pub and stuff like that, but yet they come out with PhDs and stuff like that. And I kind of just feel like it's probably a big thing that's letting our industry down, in that everyone's kind of trying to sell a master's degree other than actually letting people get in there and apply their craft. So it's just something that I feel that the industry's trended towards. And for me, I volunteered my time early days. So, and I can honestly say that every opportunity that I volunteered my time did result in some form of employment down the track. So, I can't recommend that enough. And it wasn't anything to do, like I still did my crack hours and things like that, but that was never where I actually ended up getting my employment. It was because I was proactive in seeking those opportunities. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And, so too often you can wear yourself too thin and say yes to everything and then not do one of them very well. How did you approach when Darren said, "Yeah, come down and shadow me"? How did that then eventuate to a role where he said, it sounds like he's progressed you twice with having a role in the club, and then 2 years later he gave you the development program to run yourself. So how many hours a week were you putting in that program? And
to be honest, I probably wouldn't be able to quantify it. Back then. It was probably, it wouldn't seem that much. Like it might have been anywhere up to 10 hours. So, because it was simply around uni. So it was kind of, he was good about it. He was just like, come down to whenever you want to come down. And he never once, there was never that commitment as far as, "Oh, you need to be here at X and Y." Every week I just hustle him and say, "What day's training this week? Where's it at?" And okay, I can make it this morning, I can't make it, or whatever. And that was literally how it rolled for the 2 years. So, I think for me, a lot of people try and, dabble around and jump ship because they feel like it's going to give them some form of employment. But for me, without fanboying too much, like I was just stoked that I was able to see someone apply their craft and do it in a professional setting. Like I wasn't actually from a football background, but to see how it actually worked at that stage, so-called in the big league in football in Australia, I was just in awe of it. So I just wanted more of it. So I didn't want to go around and, work with different things here or there and shift around to see if it could give me a job. I was more just about, well, this is brilliant. I just want to learn more of it. So
yeah, fantastic. Awesome, and put you in good stead. So, that got you in a taste into the industry. What was the next step for you after?
So like I said, I ended up doing some youth things, and then the youth coach from that team actually ended up moving on, and then I think maybe it was literally one season in between. He was coaching it and in another club, and he said, "Do you want to come and be the S&C?" So I jumped at that. That was 2 afternoons a week, and then did that for a season, and then throughout that time, because it was only 2 afternoons a week, but that was my first paid S&C role, as it stood. So I tried to reach out I'm from a tennis background, so I had a few tennis connections to try and get the ball rolling there as well. And so it ended up being that I did a couple of afternoons with a football team, a couple of afternoons with with Tennis New South Wales, and then from there, it actually, ironically, fast forward a few years, then Westfield Sports High, where I got my first full-time gig, was looking for an S&C coach, and the coach who I worked with actually hit Burjo up and said, "Do you know anyone?" And he said, "Yeah, Nate's, he's available." And straight away, boom, yeah, give him a run. So they gave me a call and went through the interview process, and that was how I jagged my first full-time role. So that's why I kind of can't stress enough how important the impacts that you have on people and the relationships that you have along the way, that it's such a small world that people kind of, it's all about windows of opportunity. And when those windows of opportunity present themselves, then, if you do a good job and you're kind of in good stead, then people will, they'll reach out to you, and that's how it all flows. So, yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. So Darren clearly was pivotal in your journey. Were there other guys that are top of mind that have helped you along the way, whether it be mentors or just guys that have helped you during degree, work experience, or even just helped out your programs yourself?
Yeah, so to be honest, I can't name, there's too many names who have actually had an impact on my career and as an individual. I kind of went through a stage where every year I liked having a mentor in different facets of my life. So whether it be a mentor for, I suppose, life, and then an S&C mentor and things like that. So I try to reach out to these different aspects of my life of people who I essentially thought were doing a good job. And then they gave me, plenty of opportunity. Brett Bartholomew is one of those guys. But I suppose from a pivotal moment in my career, I can't thank Lockie Wilmot enough, because he was the one who actually gave me my first full-time professional gig at Parramatta Eels, and it kind of all stemmed from there. And he was unreal to me. Once again, I was that annoying dude asking really dumb questions, but for me, that's just something that I've always done, man. I'm not afraid to do it, and it's just how I learn. So he played a pivotal role in me kind of getting a crack at in the big league from there. So I can't thank him enough as well. And then also Simon Harries, who ended up getting me through, with the Aussie Women's Sevens. So I had a pretty quick ride towards the back end of it. And then for me, I felt like there was a lot of guys who ended up getting gigs in the professional ranks and things like that, who I suppose I felt like I was getting too old for it. And I'd missed out on a lot of opportunities. And from there, I suppose I was like a late bloomer in those opportunities. And I suppose it's led me to where I am now. I just had a lot of opportunities and people looking out for me. So I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, fantastic. So what was your role with Lachlan? Was that when he started managing the program?
Yeah, so from there, I actually looked after the under-20s team with Parramatta Eels, and then awesome. Lockie had come over from AFL, and given that he was from an AFL background and not necessarily from a league background, it was one of those things where I actually went to GWS. It was maybe a few years before that with Joycey and him, and spent a week there in there. It wasn't I can't remember what they called it, but I spent a week in there anyway, and then from there we just became mates, and we're still good mates to this day. So as soon as the opportunity came up, given that I'd worked, I did the under-20s at the same club, and then I'd spent 6 seasons at the North Sydney Bears. It just seemed like a good fit. So I jumped at it. And some people would say I was crazy, mate, to walk away from the gig that I was in at Newington College, but it was one of those things, mate, that I was all in. So call me obsessive compulsive or call me intense, but I just knew that if there was an opportunity to learn a little bit more, then I felt like managing a team at Newington, I'd done a pretty good job. Like, those guys moved on to bigger and better things, and for me, I just wanted to get on the tools again and I suppose hone my craft, and that was where I was just a pest to Lockie.
Awesome. And what was the role with Lockie?
Yeah, so it started out as the conditioning coach.
Yep.
So when I did the under 20s, I was essentially doing everything. I had another great coach who I was fortunate enough to, essentially come side by side with me in Elliot Taylor. And for me, in going to the NRL squad, I started out looking after the conditioning. And then throughout the season, there was a few role changes and shuffles, and I ended up being involved with the rehabilitation space. So for me, it was every opportunity that presented itself. I tried to look at it as a positive, in that I wanted to, it's just another area for me to learn. So, the rehab space is an intricate space in that that I didn't have extensive experience in which I'm openly prepared to admit. But man, those 6 months that I was there, geez, I learned so much, taking on that role as well. So, something that, once again, it actually led me into my sevens role with Simon Harries, and he's an absolute, not only such a top bloke, but he's a phenomenal practitioner. And mate, I was just in awe of him as well, and just how knowledgeable the guy is. And once again, just picked his brain of how I could hone my craft, and that's where it ended up. Yeah,
fantastic. It'd be a great sport to work on in terms of the conditioning side, I imagine, the sevens.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. And then coming from rugby league, it was, just the running aspect of it was very different. And then the thing that I actually really enjoyed was working with the female athletes in it, because I was fortunate that I'd already worked at Westfield Sports High. It was a co-ed school. And for me, I genuinely love training females, because I believe that their minds do work differently when it comes to the whole training aspect and understanding why they want to do things. And for me, I'm not afraid to say that, because that's why I actually enjoyed my time there more than anything. So that was really, really great, and I was really fortunate there too.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, all the different experiences, whether it be from different genders or just different sports, they just make you more of a well-rounded coach, don't they? So you add rehab
exactly
to
right.
conditioning to gym. So the more you can dabble yourself, even if you haven't got experience before it, like you said, just sort of dive in and go all in, and you're going to grow from it.
Yeah, and that's where I think that as a coach, it's one of those things. I think the best way to learn is to go all in. And if you're ever in a role or given an opportunity where you can really, the difference between, say, when I was at Newington College was that I was essentially a manager, and it got so big to the point where I wasn't actually doing any programming, but I was more trying to build the skill set of the coaches who I was fortunate enough to work with there. And by that stage, I was like I said previously, I wanted to kind of get back on the tools. So to allow me to not have to worry about anyone else, but seriously just stay in my lane and just do one job, that's a phenomenal way to really hone your craft. So.
Yeah, fantastic. And so then you decided to become an author, mate. How did that come about?
I suppose it was one of those things that, people talk about bucket list things, and to be honest, it was a distant thing. And just how I think it's just a really good opportunity to show that you've got to kind of pivot, and particularly in the times that we've had in the last 18 months with COVID and everything like that, so at the time, Rugby Australia stood down like 75% of their staff or whatnot, me included. And at the time I thought, man, to be honest, if I was going to be staying at home with my partner who literally was about to have a kid, then I was thinking, how am I even going to stay sane in doing this? And I thought, well, literally it was from day one on the Monday, I was like, I've been talking about this in my head. I hadn't actually verbalized it to too many people, if at all. And I thought, well, now you've got a good 6 months where you don't know what's coming around the corner. So let's bunker in and do it. And sure enough, it took me from March until October. I pumped out the whole manuscript, and then it's been an editing process ever since. So, it was one of those things that over the 17 years of working in the field, I'd just been asked, and anyone who has worked in the youth space would resonate with this, in that you get asked the same questions over and over and over, and nothing changed from 2003, from when I was doing it, through to 2020 at the time. I was still getting asked the same questions from friends and family members and things like that. And I thought, there's no actual real resource out there that is just just keeps it real and explains how it all works from the development space all the way through into professional sport. But more importantly, just the benefits of sport and being physically capable to engage in sport can actually deliver in the real world. So yeah, that's basically how it all came about.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic, mate. Congratulations. It's no easy task.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, and it's hot off the print too, mate.
Yeah, it's looking good. I love the print.
It's a decent read.
Yeah. I'm a parent
that's
myself,
hot off the press. Oh, good stuff, man. Awesome. Yeah,
my
well
young
done.
fella's 2, so I'll have to get the manual.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, mate, it's just been an unreal ride, and there's been so many people who. It's funny because you go through these, you do something like this, and you think it's going to be an easy task, and never once did I think that it was going to be super easy, and I'd dust my hands off it because I'd already spoken to guys like Brett Bartholomew, I'd spoken to Ron McKeefery, David Joyce about their experiences in writing a book, and they all told me it's pretty hard work. And so in doing it, I'm glad that I've finally got there. But man, there's been some head noise along the way, and there's been so many people who I can't thank enough who have kind of reached out along the way, and just responded to me. And it's really, really cool how people who I don't even know who have reached out and said, "Oh man, I love the concept of it," or you've just done so well with how you're going about it. And I'm just blessed that those guys have actually reached out because genuinely I felt at times that I wasn't going to get there in the end. And,
for sure.
and by having that reinforcement and encouragement from people who take the time who you don't even know it's just been phenomenal, man. And I can't thank those guys enough.
And where can people buy the book for those that are watching or listening?
Yeah. So if they subscribe to The Sporting Parent, then you'll get free chapters at the start of it, which will give you some really good insights into how the book, the layout of the book and the format of it and how it evolves. So I wanted to do that so that people could get some insight to it. So if they subscribe to thesportingparent.com, you'll get that automatically. And then on Monday, the 21st of June is when it launches. So there's a pre-sale that's going to kick off next week. And then Monday, the 21st of June, it's all systems go.
Fantastic. Oh, that's exciting, mate.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And those questions that you reference, I'm intrigued from, the same questions that sort of stirred on the inspiration to write the book. What were some of those questions? I guess 3 of them maybe that
absolutely.
Parents were asking. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of them was simply just how much is too much training for my kid. Supplements are a big thing too. So, should my son be taking supplements, and if so, at what age? The resistance training one is a huge one. A variety of different factors, whether or not it be for boys, the whole thing of stunting their growth and whatnot, which we all know is, absolute fallacy. So to clear the air with that, and then also to empower female athletes coming through, letting them know that, there's so much things to do with body image and everything like that these days that, I really wanted to cater the book to the female market as well. And I was really conscious of that. So they're the topics that just continually come up time and time again. And then, we just kind of, I suppose, one of the big things for parents that we can't blame them. And that's why I've actually called it The Sporting Parent, because even when people use the term sporting parent in a negative connotational way, I don't think any parent really goes out there with that objective. They're genuinely trying their best, whether that's misguided or not. But they don't know any better. And in a lot of instances, a lot of parents feel like going down that route of specialized training and overloading their kids' schedule with booking them in here, booking them in there. They kind of feel like they are doing the right thing by their kids, which,
for sure.
There's a variety of different ways to go about it. But what I wanted to present in the book is that, this might not be the way. And, with all these advancements in technology, sports science and coaching roles, and how are we still getting it so wrong that the youth of today are still underprepared to participate in sport? Their lower body power scores are far worse than they've ever been. ACL injuries increased like 148% from 2005 to 2015 in 10 to 14-year-olds. So why are we still getting this so wrong? So that was basically it. It was just like, boom, it's a one-stop shop. So, that's in a nutshell, I suppose.
Yeah, it's super exciting, mate. Yeah, I'll definitely be subscribing and reading those three chapters, and then buying the book for June 21st. It first caught my eye when I saw your testimonial from Darren talking about how he did a PhD on the topic when he could have just read your
Yeah.
book or something along those lines.
Yeah. So it's actually, and I put a post up about this at the beginning in that I've known Darren for a long time, and wherever he's been around the world in different jobs and stuff, he's always given me the time of day. And for me, I kind of reached out and honestly, like I didn't actually expect him to have a crack at it and say, yeah, mate, I'd love to do the foreword for you. And then when he wrote it and I received it, I was like, it's actually really cool, because for me reading it, I was thinking, there's so many things that he describes in me as a personality that I fully acknowledge. But it was humorous at the time of me reading it, but at the same time, I couldn't thank him enough for actually taking the time to do it. And, so I'm extremely grateful for that. So.
Fantastic. And the role with Brisbane, how long have you been in that directing role? And explain a little bit the program for those that aren't aware of what the high school's doing.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to end up being coming through with the goods, I suppose, in the interview process at the back end of last year, and it was a bit of a turbulent time to get up here, and I ended up relocating up here with my partner and son in January. So we'd started in January, and I've got a really cool team of the school's gone about it a very different way. I haven't seen a model like they have, because they're an extremely academic school, and the way that they integrate their performance development into the actual academic day to allow not only the students to continue with that academic success in the way that they've structured their day to include it as part of the day, so that there's not so much before school and after school training, has been really, really cool. I suppose I'd be rude not to give a shout out to the guys that I work with, Adam Block, who was the one who's given me the opportunity there, which I'm extremely grateful for. And the other teams of coaches who I have in Rhett Cope and Grant Cole, Kat Pace, Jordan Manning, where we're all one big team in that we have different roles to play, and it's a different space. In that we're actually allowed to apply our craft, but in a different, it's such a different way that they've done it, that the former three schools I've been at haven't done it that way. So it's exciting times for me. So
is that yeah, like you mentioned, not doing it like 6 a.m. and before school and lunchtime and after school, they're doing it as part of the PE curriculum, is it? Or
yeah. So what it is that basically in the public schooling system, like say when I was at Westfield Sports High, a lot of that stuff would be done during the day, but there'd be little, if anything, done before school and after school. They're all doing their club stuff. And in the private schools, it's usually all before school and all after school, sorry. And then here, what they've actually done is they've made it so that in year 11 and 12, it's a very much a multi-sport approach, in that they opt in for what they call, would be part of, like say, the PDHPE thing, in order to keep them active, in that they either opt for a multi-sport option, or they opt for what they call a performance development option. So what you'd have is you might have, let's call it rugby union and basketball guys. If it's in the same season, they would be all doing the conditioning together. They might be doing speed training together and things like that. So you have, students who could be from up to anywhere from say 3 sports, 4 sports, all in one, doing it together as part of a double period. So 2 45-minute sessions, once a week in it. And so that's for year 11s and year 12. So they're on 2 days, and then it just frees up the skills training, so to speak, to be, a little bit more, so that can be in the gym as well. Even so, to give you an example, what my day looks like tomorrow is the first 45 minutes is the rugby guys will be doing strength training with me in the gym, and then the next 45 minutes I'll be out on the field doing conditioning stuff. So it just allows that for the rugby training, so to speak, it's literally skills training a couple of times a week, and then they're done. So it's a cool model, because it just does free up, a couple of afternoons or a couple of mornings for the students to really try and hone their craft. And, students have so many things going on in these schools that even on Friday evening, I went to a drama performance, which was phenomenal. And then half the guys on the stage are, they're football players, rugby players and things like that. And you're just like, it's crazy the commitments that the students have. So in order to free that time up, it's a really cool model and something that I think that more schools should adopt for sure.
Where has it come from? Is it from another country?
They created it, mate. No. I suppose the biggest strength for it is that the PDHPE guys really supported it, in that they know that, the physical activity side of things can enhance academic performance as well. So they're all on board with it, and the whole, game sense approach and things like that in the PDHPE curriculum, they were all for the multi-sport games. And so they've allowed that to happen, which is very unusual in schools. And the reason why I'm singing the praises for it is because it is heavily an academic school, and it shows that by them allowing them to engage in these activities during the schooling day, and still have such success, it's great. And that's why I think that we shouldn't look at physical activity as a barrier or a hurdle to academic performance from a time perspective, but really encouraging it, knowing that it's going to assist in the academic day for students throughout it. So it's a model that they've come up with, and I know Adam Block played a massive role in that, and it's something that, like I said, I'm still kind of trying to get my head around it, being new in the role, but at the same time, it's just something that it's very different to any of the other schools I've been at.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great to hear. It sounds really holistic, and they're developing well-rounded people, well-rounded humans for life, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
And all your cohort, your team, are they all strength and conditioning coaches? Are they PE teachers? What sort of the?
Yeah, so so we've all got our own little roles, I suppose you'd say. So that's Adam and myself are full time, and then the other guys are part time. So, but what we've done is channel it in a way and stick to their strengths as well. And so there's an assistant with myself in Rhett Cope, who's an outstanding coach, and he and I are both in the gym looking after the different sports and the general user sessions. And then Grant Cole looks after, you would say, year 7 through to year 10. So for those, you're talking high school, obviously. But that's his baby, so he does the programming for that, and then that would transition into year 11 and 12 with Rhett and myself. Yeah. And then there's the two other roles. One's a rehabilitation role, and the other one's more a data management role. So there's plenty of moving parts to it. And I suppose, like I said, I'm really fortunate that I'm in an environment where people are allowed to just, when I say stay in their lane, just hone their craft in that space, whether it be rehab, data analytics, whatever. To be able to do that is really, really cool. So
yeah. And what sort of data are you guys looking at?
At the moment, it's still very much in its infancy. So what they've got a Monday. I'll give you an example, like a Monday morning triage for the sports that are in season. So they just go through I suppose a general wellness thing that normal professional teams would go through, but it's a little bit more catered towards a schoolboy level. But it just allows the guys to, while they're being monitored and tracked, it just allows them to continue to be consistent in their training and not opt out for different reasons. And, to link that with the rehabilitation role, there's no avenues, I suppose, or there's a lot less avenues for guys to try and get out of participating in sport and stuff like that, because, there's so many things from club sport to whatever. But the beauty of having Kat Pace in there, who's in charge of the rehab, then she works very tightly with Jordan Manning, who then they end up chasing the students up and things like that. So to give you an example, like schools I've been at before, a student might have flagged a calf injury or a knock or something. But by the time it's such an arduous process that by the time you actually track down the student, track down the injury, communicate with the physio, 3 weeks can go by, and then all of a sudden the next time you see them, they're running around out on a Saturday, and you're just like, hang on a second, did anyone clear this? Like, why is he out there on the field? So it's quite tight in that way that there's everyone knows that their role, and the students know that as well. So then that way, there's a lot less that fall through the cracks in that way. So yeah,
that's awesome. It actually reminds me a lot of an elite sporting club, in the sense that things are done, like you have your meetings, which would be like their classes, and then you've got set like gym times, conditioning times, so it's quite well, the quality, rather than just doing things for 2 hours, I imagine the quality would be a lot higher, and attention to detail, concentration, all that sort of thing.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I am fully cognizant of the fact that we do have the resources to do it, but by no means are we trying to replicate a professional sporting scenario with schoolboys. It's just more a matter of us having the opportunity, I suppose, to just to stay on top of it and allow people to stay in those roles. It just makes it so much more easier, as opposed to being most schools will have like an S&C director like myself or whatnot, and it's really the buck stops at you, and you're just not as productive because you're forever chasing up different things along the way. So
For sure.
for me, it just really allows me to hone my craft once again, and program for the first 15 rugby guys and things like that. So yeah, it's a really cool model. Like I said, it's still very much in its infancy, and hopefully we can evolve it into something that will be something that other people and other schools look at.
No doubt. Awesome, mate. Well, we'll start to wrap it up. Thanks so much for jumping on. What
No
are you
worries.
excited about for 2021? What's on the horizon for you? I can have a guess.
Yeah, mate, I don't think you need to guess at that, but the book has spent a lot of time for me. I've had a lot of people reach out with it, which has been really, really cool. So I suppose it'll just be the whole roadshow, really, of getting it on the road and making it work.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. Thank you so much. Well, appreciate your time and sharing your experiences and your journey throughout from the start to now, mate. It's been massively valuable for myself, and I'm sure for all those that are tuned in.
No worries. Thank you very much for the offer and being on here. Yeah, wrapped to be here, and I really appreciate the guys who have tuned on and stayed on here for that matter too.
I know that you've had them engaged, mate. They've been on the whole time. It's been awesome.
Legends. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, man. Cheers, bud. Good on you. Bye.
Catch you, mate. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you caught us halfway through, this will be on IGTV on my Instagram, so feel free to watch it from the very beginning. We'll also be converting the audio into our podcast in the next coming weeks. We'll launch it on a Monday, so stay tuned. It'll be on iTunes, Spotify. And if you want to join our community and receive a free 4-week strength and conditioning coach program, head over to our Instagram, click the link in our bio where you can receive that free program. And if you want to work with one of our coaches, click that same link and you'll get a AFL strength and conditioning coach to work with. Thanks, guys.